I'd like to talk about something now that, to my knowledge, I've never brought up in one of these videos. I am a prolific author. I, in fact, have about 65 short stories and novellas and 4 currently self-published novels, with another 3 on the way. Perhaps if you follow my Twitch stream, you have heard me do story times, wherein I read one of my short stories to my Twitch audience every so often. People will comment during these story times with things like, "Wow, this is who wrote this?" And I'm like, "What do you mean, who wrote this? Why would I be reading somebody else's work?" And they say, "Well, you wrote this?" And I don't know whether to be insulted that they're surprised I wrote something that they enjoy, but I don't think that's the right reaction. Someone explained it to me as people on the internet, when they receive free writing that just is on the internet, not a book they bought, they expect like fan fiction tier prose. They don't expect something that's technically well written. They don't expect competent storytelling. They don't expect it to be something that they're sincerely intrigued by. But I have 4 novels that you can read. I'd like to discuss the general outline of each one of them in hopes of driving some sales. I've sold maybe a dozen books this December, which would be dismal, except that I sold almost none at all month after month before that. It's only now that I've had a large Twitter presence that I've been able to really adequately market these novels. The first one I'd like to discuss is Pressure, which anybody familiar with my channel will not be surprised to learn is a deep sea survival horror story. I say survival horror because it borrows a lot thematically from survival horror games like Silent Hill 2 or Soma. It is set in a trio, 3 different underwater facilities. It features very precise and accurate descriptions of how deep sea life support and vehicular and exoskeleton technologies work without being dry, without going on for too long. It just contributes to the believability of the world building. It involves, at least in part 1, a sleep researcher sent down to a deep sea modular habitat to study anomalies in the dreams of the crew. Very similar to the plot of Sphere, but after that point in parts 2 and 3, it goes off in a very different direction. Things get very strange very quickly. The second book I'd like to talk about is The Resurrection Men, seen here. These covers are by my wonderfully talented artist friend Acolonia, aka Luis Molina. The Resurrection Men takes the premise of Frankenstein and goes much further with it, imagining that the process of resurrecting corpses it has gone from being a one-off scientific miracle to a repeatable industrialized process done on the consumer level, offered covertly as a secret consumer service available only to very wealthy patrons who are approached by the proprietors of this business who set up shop in buildings adjacent to graveyards for easy access to the freshly buried corpses in order to get their loved ones back from the grave. And initially this seems like a dream come true, but there are, of course, catches. The dead do not return quite themselves, and there are side effects, and there's an addiction to a substance that they need in order to remain up and animated. And the deeper you dig, the nastier and worse it gets, like picking up a big rock in your garden and there's all these slugs and worms and spiders underneath it. It just gets worse the closer you look. And because everybody's selfish, it's a tragedy of the commons. People can't help themselves. They all avail themselves of the service if they can afford to, until pretty soon, because the reanimated dead are immortal, the reanimated dead living in secret in subterranean cities underneath our cities outnumber the living. And all hell breaks loose shortly after that, and the second and third parts of the novel explore the far-reaching consequences of a war between the intelligent reanimated dead and what's left of humanity. I would say it's very Tesla punk. It has a lot of early electrical technologies and electrical mysticism associated with Tesla and Edison in it. I would say it's somewhat gothic and Victorian. It certainly has those themes. It's got a good mixture of themes. The next one I'd like to discuss is All the Little People. This is basically Hampshire the novel, except that instead of hamsters, it's a miniature society of alchemically created magical tiny humanoids. A boy who is severely bullied is run off into the woods by his bullies, and there he accidentally stumbles across a tiny village inhabited by tiny little people and the witch who created them. And the kindly elderly witch befriends the boy, and later entrusts, or I don't want to say exactly how it happens, but she entrusts care of the little society she's created to him after she is gone. And he has to protect them, he has to keep them secret, and he uses his technical knowledge of machinery to sort of industrialize them. He creates all these modern contrivances for them, like bringing them a car battery, bringing them a little model steam engine with which they can generate current to charge the battery, and building an electric fence to keep out cats, bringing little stackable shelves so they can do vertical farming, and just building them up with all these cool technologies made out of repurposed junk that humans use for something completely different, like mouse bunk, like Rescue Rangers, how all their technology was made out of discarded human junk. Well, in this one, it's little tiny humans, and it's a boy trying to improve their quality of life, improve their defensibility, give them weapons, give them electricity, give them electric lights. He builds them a little train and uses upturned gutter sections to make a tunnel for the train so it can discreetly carry food and other supplies from his backyard to their colony in the woods. It's all very fun, and as you can imagine, if you follow the project, eventually this entails building for them an underwater colony out of weighted down mason jars connected with tubing. It involves flying colonies that are like flying birdhouses suspended from balloons, but the lower section literally is for birds because that's what they use as vehicles. The little people have bird mounts, and it goes into all these deep details about how their little society would work and how their technology would progress from stage to stage with the boy's help. The next and last novel I like to discuss is Little Robot, which I should probably let you figure this out for yourselves, but features an amnesiac adult version of that boy who has gone on to completely forget everything that happened in the prior novel, for reasons which will become clear if you read it. He has a bad time with some of the other kids and has a mental breakdown and has a treatment such that he forgets everything. He goes on to work as a roboticist because of his technical know-how, his ability to tinker, and also because many of the technologies the little people themselves developed, but he forgot about them, that they left these behind, and he was able to recover and study them and apply them to his work. He's very misanthropic and fearful of other people. He trusts robots because they satisfy the same need in him to nurture and take care of something simpler than himself that the little people used to fulfill in him. So he is a caretaker for robots. He salvages old robots from the dump, fixes them up, cleans them off, puts in new batteries, and they live in his apartment with him as his helpers. And he keeps them on legacy software. He upgrades their abilities, though, with Arduinos and things so they can understand speech, and just gives them a better life so that they just don't get just thrown out as trash. His affection for robots becomes a problem, though, because mounting tensions over technological unemployment leads a domestic terrorist cell to infect all domestic robots in the country with a virus that unfolds in stages, the first stage of which is very much like Night of the Living Dead. The robots simply stop what they're doing, go find a knife or rock or nearest weapon, and then kill any nearby humans. And this plays out not like Terminator, because these are not super durable robots. There are some military robots, and they're much more threatening in this novel. They're a much bigger problem, but most of the infected robots are like Asimo. They're largely plastic. They're shorter than we are. They're only as strong as they need to be. So they're not really a threat, except there's a lot of them. So it's very much like a Walking Dead dynamic, except with simple humanoid robots instead of zombies. So I mentioned his affection for robots becoming a problem, and how that happens is that with this war going on, when the AI that he was working on, that was his best friend and sort of his like waifu, a la the film Her or the AI girlfriend from Blade Runner 2049, he was working on this as a side project in private because he, of course, was lonely, but he couldn't trust humans. It figures out how to control the fabricator, which is like a general purpose factory that can make anything out of raw materials, which is part of the research project he's working on with evolutionary robotics. To it uses this to build itself a body, and it's a very appealing womanly body because its purpose is to help and to nurture, and it identifies those qualities with women, which the novel acknowledges is these days a problematic notion. It goes into some detail about the social climate of today and gender roles and all these different things and how those apply to robots, how people react to robots disrupting those age-old gender politics, and also how people react in the middle of a war between robots and humans to a dude with a robot girlfriend and his attempts to protect her from them and convince people that she's not a danger. So that's the 4 that I have out now. I'm working on another 3. Usually what I do is I write stories and then sequels until I have a trilogy that's capped off neatly in a nice little 3-part package, and then I put that together into a novel. And right now I'm having those published in China via FiberRead, and hopefully that gets me the attention I need to hello, kitty cat. Come on. To get some big name publishers interested here in the U.S. And if not, I would still get pleasure just from knowing that my followers have read and enjoyed these novels that I worked so hard on. So take a look. The link to the Amazon page where you can buy all 4 of these novels is in the video description, and in fact has been in every video description for a while.